This guy was drowning in debt. To make matters worse, Minza's mother was gravely ill, needing expensive surgery. He desperately sought money everywhere, but only managed to borrow 2 million won. Suddenly, he had an idea. Invest the 2 million in gambling. With luck, he could earn enough for the surgery in one night. But life isn't a fairy tale. Just as Minza hit the jackpot, his big win caught the casino owner's eye. When he went to the restroom, a thug followed him in, beat him up, and took all his money, leaving Minza with nothing. Mum begged for money for her surgery, but the guy didn't care. He lost it all and was desperate. He asked his boss for a year's salary advance, but was refused. Bitter, he quit his job. Meanwhile, another man was in a similar situation. He was a corrupt inspector addicted to gambling. His family left him. Depressed, he took all his money for one last game. Seeing a good hand, he thought he'd win for sure and bet everything. Who'd have thought his opponent wouldn't flinch at his bet? They doubled down. The inspector, out of options, wagered his entire stash. But when his rival revealed a royal flush, he lost it all. Broke, he couldn't even afford a night at the station. Word of his gambling reached his superiors, who swiftly fired him. They demanded he return the evidence, but it was all gone. Desperate, he had no choice but to beg the casino boss for his stuff back. However, the opposition is extremely tough. Without money, forget about getting the goods back. Even the inspector left helpless. Meanwhile, Senator Moon is preparing his presidential run. But he's trailing behind others, with few supporters. He needs substantial funds for his campaign. So he approached someone for money, none other than the crime boss, Shen. The same one who sent the inspector to Dadao and took all of Minza's money. Interestingly, Shen's operations are protected by Senator Moon. In return, he had to obey and pay him. After being treated harshly by the politician many times, he wanted to eliminate the threat. He called a subordinate and ordered him to deal with the troublesome politician. However, the subordinate said it was impossible to act against the politician at close range. He needed high-grade weapons. Coincidentally, the boss had some of Inspector Choi's confiscated weapons. The boss immediately summoned his subordinate and ordered him to deliver the weapons to the hitman. Surprisingly, the subordinate was lazy and sent a courier to deliver the package instead. But when he arrived at the controller's house, no one was home. With no other option, the delivery man knocked on the neighbor's door. Surprisingly, the neighbor was Minja. He handed over the package, but upon opening it, the man was stunned to find illegal goods inside. This gave him an idea. Use it at a casino to recoup his money. Meanwhile, the inspector was in a tight spot. If he didn't recover the contraband soon, he'd face jail time. To make quick cash, he considered selling drugs. With this plan, he sprang into action. First, he and his partner grabbed some packages from storage, then bought some counterfeit goods. They headed to Mr. Becker's to sell some powder packets. Unexpectedly, they ran into Minjae, who was going the same way. Though strangers, they shared the path. At their destination, Minja planned to exchange the goods for cash. But a thug suddenly greeted an inspector. Terrified, he fled to the bathroom to hide. Before he could calm down, the inspector dragged another guy in, forcing him to buy the goods. Just then, Minza's room door suddenly opened. Both sides rushed to defend, but seeing the item in Minza's hand, Inspector Choi thought it fake. Unaware it was his, he didn't worry much and dragged the other guy out. After escaping, Minza was still terrified, planning to grab the toilet water and flee. Surprisingly, pulling a string opened the secret room door leading to the tycoon's room. Minza went in to check and saw Mr. Beck putting lots of cash in a safe. Greed took over. He grabbed the hot goods, threatening Mr. Beck to hand over everything. Seeing that the opponent had Mr. Buck's belongings, he didn't dare take any risks. He just put all the money in his pocket and handed it over to Minza. With the money in hand, he quickly left. Just as he entered the secret room, he met Congressman Moon's juniors who had come to collect the money. However, who would have thought that their money had already been taken by the main character? When they found out there was no money, they were furious. He immediately slammed his kite down on the table and warned Mr. Beck that if he didn't get the money within the next 24 hours, his fate would be just like this table. Despite this, he wasn't worried, thinking that the warden would handle Congressman Yoon first. But just then, Inspector D called. He had been waiting a long time and still hadn't found the goods. At this point, everything erupted, and the junior who had delivered the goods through the shipper was so angry that Mr. B came back to teach the junior a lesson. He then forced him to go and find the lost item. Meanwhile, the controller, having no hot goods, decided to use the Dao. Since this guy had a super talent for flying high, after lighting the incense of the ancestors, hoping for the blessing of the elders, he also was able to go up. Just as he stepped outside, he spotted Minza with hot goods and hatched a plan to steal them. He had just brought money home. Suddenly, Minza heard knocking. Seeing his neighbor about to break in, he fled. The intruder searched and found the hot goods, then left. Unexpectedly, Beck's lackey arrived with a shipper. They entered the open door while Mincy hid on the balcony. The thug spotted the package, but upon opening it found the contents missing. Convinced it was still in the room, he ransacked everything. Surprisingly, he found a money bag. Before he could rejoice, the delivery guy knocked him out and fled with the cash. Minze witnessed it all from outside. Seeing his money taken, he quickly hailed a taxi to pursue. They reached a bridge where the courier abandoned his vehicle. Suddenly, a passing truck startled him, causing him to fall. Down by the river under the bridge, Inspector Troy was dealing drugs with customers, when he suddenly spotted someone floating in the water. He quickly pulled the person ashore, but noticed they were clutching a bag tightly. Curious, he opened it to find a large sum of money inside, which startled him. It turned out the money belonged to Inspector Troy himself. With this unexpected windfall, he rushed to pay off a debt. However, Minde spotted him on the way. The protagonist gave chase, but the money was already with the police. He didn't dare act rashly, only observing from outside. Inside, the inspector tossed the money bag to B, who claimed it wasn't his. This infuriated the inspector. Just then, his superior called. They'd found a badly injured person at Minze's place, so he had to go. Meanwhile, the assassin reached Congressman Moon's house, but was spotted by a dog before he could act. With no choice left, he aborted the mission. Returning home, he panicked, seeing many police around, fearing discovery. Little did he know, the inspector saw it again, thinking it was the guy who hit Minze's house. He planned to arrest him for questioning, but the suspect suddenly pulled out a weapon. The inspector then realized it was his own gun, stolen earlier. Faced with his own weapon, he couldn't react. A loud bang echoed. The politician collapsed, ensuring he was down. The assailant jumped on stage and fired a few more shots. Surprisingly, Moon wasn't hurt at all. At this moment, Inspector Min swiftly arrived to apprehend the suspect. Meanwhile, the protagonist seized the chaos to steal money and flee. The young boy spotted this and alerted everyone. Seeing this, Inspector Choi quickly gave chase in his vehicle. They cornered the suspect at a bridge, but he jumped into the river to escape. Luckily, nearby anglers rescued him. In the end, the police arrested the entire group. Back at the station, Inspector Troy claimed he investigated to clear the crime. The interrogator said he got the boy's name to pay MP Moon, but still doesn't know why it failed. Meanwhile, neither the MP nor the boy dared take the money, fearing investigation and punishment. Despite this, they had to face consequences. Only the protagonist insisted the money was his, even showing his mother's hospital bill as proof. Finally, the police believed him and returned all the money to Mindra. With the cash in hand, he rushed to the hospital. He thought he'd secured money for his mom's treatment. But the next day, Inspector Choi showed up. When no one was around, he stole the money bag. After a while, something felt off. Opening it, he found only tonics inside. Minde had outsmarted him, swapping the cash for medicine. Realizing he'd been tricked, he rushed back, chasing the lead who was fleeing with the money. But just as Minde reached the hospital exit, he fell into a manhole. That's where our movie ends. Thanks for watching and see you next time. Bye.